Okay, we're back in the kitchen, and Tom is going to show us what he's sketched out. Now, I've looked at these already, and you're going to see, this isn't all just in his head. I mean, it is, maybe, but here's why it's all in his head. So he's actually got a kind of a drawing where he's laid things out according to his vision. And it shows the various pieces of wood and their lengths and dimensions. So he's got it up in his head all right, but he laid it out so that he has a plan. And then down here, you can see where he's got the size of his boards and how many that he needs, and he counted them all up. And it doesn't have to be fancy, folks. It doesn't have to be an architectural drawing. You don't have to run out and buy yourself software to design this thing ahead of time, but you do have to plan it out. You've got calculations done over here. You do have to at least plan it out to whatever means is satisfactory to you so that you understand what your direction is going to be. What boards are you going to use? Where are they going to go? And you can do several of these until you finally come to one that you're satisfied with, and then that becomes, in the industrial world, this would lead to what would be called a bill of materials, so that you would know how many of what length and type and size of board to go out and buy. And that's it for Tom right there. And then he might quickly calculate, knowing that he wants to space screws along, once every foot or once every 2 feet or something. Then he can quickly rough out how many boxes of screws he needs to go by. But this is it. I just wanted to show you this because I got kind of scared out in the garage when he said, no, it's all up here. And it is, but it's also down here. So there is something you can do with very little effort, just a pen and a piece of paper, to get yourself going in an organized fashion. Nice job, Tom.
Thank you.
All right, so we're about now at the next physical step here, where Tom is going to be taking those parts we saw out in the garage and installing them. So what's your logic here? What's your plan of attack?
Okay, the plan of attack is I'm going to put one of those frame elements out here, one on that end. I'm going to cut a board for the bottom that will be the same length, which should be 72 inches. Then I'm going to place them on and attach them to the wall.
Oh,
okay.
Okay.
That board on the bottom, because it's a floating floor, will be a floating board. Once I've got the 2 outer edges up, I will put a board between them and screw down into the other board so that board never goes through. The nails or screws never go through.
Okay. And that bottom board, that's kind of structural, right? That keeps the end boards from...
I will screw in from the ends so that these 2 boards keep it right in place.
Okay, gotcha.
Even the one that's free floating will get screwed in from the ends to make sure it stays in place.
To the uprights.
To the uprights.
To the uprights. Okay, and that'll make it a solid, rigid
Two
structure.
uprights are next.
Okay.
It's probably the most important part of the project in terms of getting it plumb, straight up and down, and so that it's not skewed in any way or doesn't bow out or bow in. Okay, so this is kind of like the crux of the thing. Once this is in, everything else is easy sailing.
Okay. All right. Excellent.
All right.
So now we know what you're heading to do. So we'll pick this back up when you're ready to start drilling holes or whatnot.
Yep.
And show us how that's done.
Well,
Excellent.
Will do.
All right. So Tom's going up right now because he's going to put an additional piece of tape on the same stud. See, he's got this tape down here. That tells you where the stud is, but the stud goes all the way up, of course. Now he's going to find it again up there. There's those lights. There they are. Yeah, all right, that's the top of that same stud. That was pretty easy. Wait, did I have the right stuff?
You need a fairly thick rule in order to stay on that space.
What were you trying to measure? What were you
I
trying?
measure from the wall to this mark.
Yes.
So I'll do that up here, I'll do it on the bottom, and if it's not on the stud on the bottom, then that stud isn't necessarily straight, which is a piece of information you need to.
Oh, there's another nugget,
Sure
people.
everything lines up correctly.
There's
before
another nugget.
anything.
So if you didn't get that, let me amplify it. Tom is saying that just because you know you found the same stud doesn't mean that it's perfectly straight and therefore that it's perfectly plumb. He wishes he could depend on that. So now he's measuring over to that piece of tape.
146.
What was that?
140.
46 inches.
I'm writing all my measurements and stuff on the wall. Make sure you write it inside of the area that you're going to. Otherwise, you have to paint the walls up.
Another little tidbit. Experience teaches you so that you don't have to learn that one the hard way. What's all that marking on my wall, honey? I love the fireplace, but somebody wrote all over our walls. Oh, look at this. He's holding it upside down. I didn't know you could do that, but I guess you can. And once again, the lights are on. So he has the same stud, but to his earlier point, you don't know if that point is exactly, if the thing is vertical and straight and plumb. $81.75. All right. And that is the kind of thing that would make an assumption. He would assume that that stud goes straight up and down and that he can rely on putting something right next to it and it'll be perfectly plumb. And this is the years of experience Tom has had. He knows better. So he's doing a measurement to make sure that the distance to the wall is the same.
$145.75.
145.75. All right, let's see where Tom has gotten to. Since we last left off. Now, truth be told, I already know where he's gotten to. Tom has taken his outer framing and reinforced them with lag bolts. Me being the pain in the butt I am, I've asked him to remove one so we can see what it is we're talking about, why he did it, and more specifically, how he went about installing it. Because once again, there's a small detail that might elude people, but it's very important. So initially, he had put screws in, and right under that lag bolt there. Let's see if I can get on here and zoom in. Yeah. So that was the initial screw, and he had put a bunch of those in. And of course, you remember that he had taken all his measurements. He knew the thing was lined up on the stud, so all he had to do is drill the holes and put the screws in. But now he's gone in and he's put these big things in, which dig in even deeper. So we're going to take a look at one, and we're going to see why he did it.
There's one.
Okay,
Okay. Much larger threads. Okay, it's actually a 1/4 inch thread, whereas the other one's probably maybe a 1/6 at most.
and longer too,
And
right?
it's about the same size.
Oh, are they really?
Okay, I think they're both 3.5 inches.
Okay,
This one, I put a washer on it before putting it on the wood, and the reason being is that the head otherwise will kind of dig into the wood
right.
and get loosened or just not do its job. So
So
that's
this
why I
way here,
use
the head
washer.
of the bolt will put pressure against the flat washer, and that'll press against the wood, and then
Correct.
you'll have good, okay.
Some of those I put in without pre-drilling, and the reason being is that when you pre-drill, it makes it a lot easier to go in.
Yes,
But it also sometimes doesn't make it quite as strong,
okay.
depending on the size of the hole you drill. These, they have to be pre-drilled. There's no way you can get that to go through the
Oh, you
wood
were referring to the screws,
to the screw.
the screws, but a lag bolt
The lag
has to
bolts
be
need to be pre-drilled. You need to make a big enough hole so it doesn't put so much stress on the wood that it might split
it
it.
might split it.
Okay? And
Exactly.
so, I mean, basically, you want a drill bit that's the same size as the head up here that has
No threads on it. Okay, so
That's a maximum.
at a maximum, you could go a little bit smaller than that diameter.
Right, it would just be a little bit more work. But,
We'll put it in, okay.
all right, so I'm gonna put this one back.
Put this one back in now.
Back in. And the tool here is
Simple socket
not
wrench.
as a simple socket as opposed to a drill bit. or-
Right. But these larger lag bolts are really gonna make this a super solid, super strong structure. I don't know what he intends to do with it, if he intends to hang weights off of this thing later, elephants or whatnot, but it could probably hold him up once he gets done.
Probably a 70-pound TV.
70-pound TV, he says, okay. Excellent, okay. So we'll be coming back to this in a few moments with the next important addition. All right, so Tom, where are we going now that we've got the outer framework done and all lagged to the wall?
Okay, now what we need to do is build 2 sections, one at the bottom and one at top, that are basically the stud work and also a place to mount the fireplace.
Okay.
So the next step is really to take some measurements, determine a height for the fireplace, and put those members in that will hold that all together.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
We know that this guy down here is 69 inches, right?
Correct.
If you were,
It should be everything all the way up.
and that was my question.
I measured
Will
the
you,
top.
will you actually just cut boards to 69 inches, or will you actually measure the location they're going into to see if you need to add an eighth or
Look
not?
at these, this says 69.
Okay,
69 at the top, bottom we've already determined 69 for the board. Now, could you have a 69 and a 16th? Sure, don't care. I
okay,
mean, they're gonna be screwed in from this side with a 3.5-inch screw. So, I mean, I could just kind of bury the screw
Okay.
into the wood a little bit and it would be the same.
and that was really my question. Would something like a 16th of an inch difference matters? And you're saying the way you built it, you can just do 69-inch cuts all the way up?
All the way up, right.
Okay.
Now, keep in mind, there's only gonna be cut here, and then there's gonna be another board on top of that, and then it's gonna go with studs all the way at the top. So it'll
Oh,
be a
right.
Top 69-inch board, one on the bottom of this, above the, slightly above the, fireplace, and one on top of the fireplace, and then the bottom one down.
Okay,
I'll probably put another board in here so they can actually build the bottom section, put it in place, screw it in, without having to stick build it, piece by piece.
okay,
So, okay, and now I'll do the same thing above. Once that's in, the fireplace is all set, and we're sure that the measurements are all correct.
very good. All right, so Tom, I see you got paper and pencil out. What are you intending to do here?
I'm going to just give a little demonstration of what we're going to do for the next step.
Oh, okay,
We already have our outside in place. And basically, it'll be 2 sections. The bottom section is for fireplace. Top section is for a TV mount, to put a TV up there. So what I'm going to do is build a bottom piece first that is basically going to look something like this. And that will be the area for the fireplace. And it will have stud work underneath it to keep this board in the correct place and also support it. So it will match up with the upper area, something like this. Okay, those will be the studs, and we'll have the fireplace. This one will go, we'll put one there, we'll put one there. So this board is supported, this board is supported. Then when we come along later, what we'll do is we'll put a board here, and studs matching these in terms of placement all the way up.
Okay.
Okay, so
Yeah.
it looks something like that when all is said and done. This one is important because this needs to be, the TV needs to be in the center, the TV support. So this is actually a 16-inch mount, so I'll have 8 inches to this stud, center of that stud, 8 inches to the center of that stud,
No, okay.
and then these will be 16-inch bases.
All right. So mapping things out like this is just a good visual way for you to have a thought process going forward of what you need to cut and measure and all the rest
Correct.
of it. Okay.
Correct. The idea too is do it in steps. You don't try to bite it all off and cut it all and put it up. What you do is one step at a time. So we'll build this bottom step, make sure that it's correct. If it's not, because we're screwing it, you can fix it, move it, whatever needs to be done. Once that's determined, then you can build the top portion, knowing that the bottom portion is complete. And in between, I'll check the fireplace, make sure it fits there before we
Awesome.
move on.
Good step. Good insights. All righty.
All right, so happy cutting for me. As long as,
All right, now what we're going to show you here, Tom went to put one of the 69-inch boards in at the bottom that he's going to use as a support for the studs. Because of an irregularity in the mating pieces of wood, it didn't quite fit. And he needs to shave off ever so little of the end of this board. And here's how that's done. So you're going to show us, right? You're going to...
yep, put the blade down, making sure you don't put your hand on the trigger. Make sure the board's lined up with the fence. Push it up to the blade.
Push it right up against the blade.
Right up against the blade. Let the blade go up. So you're not putting your hands under it while you're using it. Slightly move the board.
Okay.
What you want to take off.
And you're doing this by hand, and maybe you're moving a what, a 16th or an eighth of an inch or something?
16th that was
Okay.
probably. First time was 16th also probably.
All right.
And you can tell that by just putting the blade down. You can see how close the blade is to the edge.
Okay. On that if I can here.
All right, and I'll put it just a little bit more because there's no sense in it being.
So that's how much, you're going to take off right there. It looks close to being half the thickness of the blade. Is that about right?
Which is about a little less than an eighth of an inch probably.
Okay. How about
All right,
that?
you ready?
Yeah.
When you're doing a shave like that, you really have to hold the board. Well,
Yes.
Because otherwise it's going to push it out.
Sure.
So.
Sure.
yeah,
But you're able to do it. Just
it's easy to do. You just have to be where you got the.
you don't need clamps or anything like that.
No.
Just good hand pressure.
Yep.
And then you,
Sure. Making sure your hands are away from the blade.
yes.
Good hand pressure.
Yes. Excellent. All right, Tom has now laid his board he just cut in the bottom. Now that third board that you see there from the bottom is going to be what he attaches his studs to. And he's going to do them in a way that might not be obvious to everybody, and he'll explain that in a bit. Because I agree with him totally. I love the way he's going to do it, and I think you will too. So what were you just talking about here, Tom? You're talking about finding center lines or something?
Well, right. What the way this is built is it's supposed to be proportional around the center. Okay, so that the everything is centered on the couch, as we said in the beginning, and the center line has already been calculated based on this and that. So 69 inches is the center between here and there.
Right.
Okay, so we're going to mark the middle of the board. So 69 is going to be 34 and a half. All right, so mark at 34 and a half. Open the other end and check it. Make sure it's 34 and a half. The reason it is it's one of those cases of measured twice, cut once.
Measure twice, cut once.
Okay, so now I'm gonna mark where my studs are gonna go. And studs are 16 inches in center in most houses. Sometimes they're 24, sometimes they're 12, sometimes they're 18. For the most part, inside walls will always be 16 inches.
And you knew that because yesterday when you had the tape on the walls, you had already used your stud finder and they were 16 inches
16
in.
inches apart, right? The only, usually what happens is they're all 16 throughout the house. However, in some of the houses where they bring prefab walls, they'll be 24 because they make 24-inch insulation. On the outside, it's acceptable. They'll use 2x6 construction instead of 2x4, so still it's just as strong as it would be otherwise. It takes a little bit less time. All right, I'm gonna mark my stud. And if you notice, I don't know if you noticed on the rule, all the red ones, those are 16 inches apart.
Oh, I did not notice that.
I've got my 48-inch mark on my center line.
Okay.
So I can get down here and mark 32,
Well, I am glad you
Mark.
explained that.
16. Now,
Because I was looking at the fact that you had this thing hanging off the edge, and I'm going, what's he
Yeah.
going to measure here?
let's think twice and measure once. Yeah, okay. So 16 inches is going to be on center. So I want 8 inches and then 16 inches. Okay. So now I'm going to put my mark at 40 inches.
Right.
And I'm going to go with 32 and 48.
Gotcha.
Right, and those are 16 inches apart. I'll go from 32 down to 16. And I'll go from 16 the other way. I usually mark them, mark this with a C, so you know it's the center.
Oh, right, right.
And there'll be times when you want to mark things like S for stud.
Okay.
When things get complex, you need to make sure you've got it marked so you know what you're doing.
So in this
Nope,
case,
there-
I'm looking, where's your center line here?
There's my center, so I gotta come down,
8 inches, right?
right,
So the exact center of this whole thing, there is no stud.
correct. It'll be on either side 8 inches so that it's
Right, okay.
the center bone of the stud. Now, when part of the reason for doing it this way, with those measurements, is when we put the TV mount up, TV mount is centered on 16-inch stud. So the TV mount, the center of TV mount needs to be on the center.
Yes.
Each edge, because the 16-inch mount, will be 8 inches away. Right? So
Yes.
when we're doing the top, you want it to be such that the whole center cavity is in the center. And I'm doing the same thing on the bottom because it's more consistent, and you don't want somebody coming later trying to find out where the studs are, because you can't do that necessarily.
You just made me think, once all this framing is done, it would be an excellent idea to take a picture of it
Yes.
so that you know exactly what's behind it, because after you put all the pretty stuff up, you won't see any of it.
Right. Now, what I do is, this is 10 and a half. It should be 10 and a half at this end also. Which it is, okay? Just a sanity check. Okay.
All right, what's our next step here?
Next step is to transfer marks over to here, okay? Keeping in mind the bottom. So this is the top piece here. I've marked it this way, so I'll go top.
When you say top, you mean it's going to go up?
Top board.
Yeah,
not the
okay,
bottom board.
the top of the fire.
Yes.
Okay.
It might not be the top of the fireplace board. And just getting these so that they match, and knowing that they don't quite match because
Right.
we had a shave one.
Had to shave
So I'll
one.
try to keep it, the difference pretty much even on the ends, and that way everything will be plumb. Alright, so now we take the marks that I on this bottom board and just run them across.
And you're using your little right angle to do it.
I'm doing it like that because that way it's very obvious where they are. It's well marked in there. Okay.
Yes, sir. Looking good.
All right, so, and I've marked my top board. I'm going to mark my bottom.
Says bottom, even though the camera can't pick it up.
Okay, so the bottom. And the reason for doing that is that this, if you flip this board or something like that, flip it end to end, it won't be the same for the transcribed lines. In this case, because we're working everything off the center, it would come out right, but when you're doing it in other applications, it might not come out right. So that's why we do that. Okay, so we've got everything marked. Now the question is, how high do we want this to go? The other thing,
Well, I'm going to pause you right there because
Okay.
my thing tells me I'm running out of tape, so I need to put in a new tape.
okay.